You take lunch last today. You're the least valuable person here. Garrett's words crashed into me like a physical weight, amplified by the pin-drop silence of our open workspace. 28 faces swiveled toward my desk. I gripped the edge of my chair as heat crawled up my neck and spread across my cheeks. Garrett stood at the center of the room, one hand casually in his pocket, the other pointing directly at me. The client presentation team goes first at noon, analysts at 12:30, marketing at 1. Dessa, you can head out after everyone returns. He smiled thinly. Someone needs to keep the phones covered. I forced myself to nod once, gathering my dignity as I turned back to my monitor. That's when the glass entrance doors swung open. Eldon Pike, CEO of our largest client, strode in with 2 assistants trailing behind him. His voice boomed across the silent office. "There's my miracle worker." To my horror, he was looking directly at me. "Dessa Elliott." He crossed the room with his hand extended. "Everyone, this woman single-handedly saved our annual stakeholder presentation when the data made absolutely no sense. Worked straight through the night rebuilding our entire quarterly forecast." My boss's face drained to an ashen gray as Eldon continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the suddenly electric room. "I've been telling everyone how you spotted that accounting error that would have cost us millions. In fact, I'm here specifically to discuss expanding our contract, but only if you're assigned as our exclusive representative. Before I respond with what happened next, let me take you back to how this all began. My name is Dessa Elliott, and until 6 months ago, I was living a completely different life. I'd spent 5 years building a reputation at a prestigious financial consulting firm where I specialized in identifying data anomalies that others missed. I loved the precision of numbers, the stories they told when arranged correctly. When economic downsizing eliminated my department, I found myself starting over at age 32. Garrett hired me, though he made it clear I should be grateful for the opportunity. "Your experience is impressive on paper," he'd said during my interview, "but this company requires a special kind of adaptability. We'll start you at entry level and see if you can keep up." I accepted because my savings were dwindling and the job market was tight. What I didn't know then was that Garrett had a pattern of hiring overqualified women, undermining their confidence, taking credit for their work, and keeping them trapped in positions far below their capabilities. My first 3 months were a masterclass in subtle workplace manipulation. Garrett would assign me complex projects with impossible deadlines, then criticize my output as just adequate in team meetings. He'd invite everyone except me to strategic planning sessions, then penalize me for not anticipating changes to client requirements. My ideas were dismissed in meetings, only to resurface weeks later as Garrett's innovative approach. The turning point came during the Pike Industries crisis. Pike Industries represented nearly 40% of our company's annual revenue, a client relationship. Garrett frequently reminded everyone he had personally cultivated for 7 years. Their quarterly financial review was approaching, and our team had been given a rush project to prepare their presentation materials. Garrett assigned himself and the senior analysts to the visible components: executive summary, strategic recommendations, visual presentations. I was given what he called background verification, essentially checking numbers and formatting footnotes. "Perfect for your skill level," he told me with a smile that never reached his eyes. I stayed late that Thursday, cross-referencing data points while the office emptied around me. Around 9 o'clock, I noticed something odd in the year-over-year projections. A discrepancy in the forecasting model that didn't align with previous quarters. Most people would have flagged it and moved on, but years of forensic accounting had trained me to pull on loose threads. 3 hours later, I'd uncovered a fundamental error in their accounting structure, one that artificially inflated projected earnings by nearly 22%. If presented to stakeholders, it would trigger automatic penalties from their investors once discovered. Worse, the error had cascaded through every financial document prepared for the last 8 months. I called Pike Industries' finance director, despite the late hour. "This can't be happening," Ren Havers whispered when I walked her through my findings. "The stakeholder meeting is at 9 tomorrow morning. These projections are the centerpiece." "I can rebuild it," I heard myself say. "If you can get me access to the raw data, I can reconstruct the entire forecast model tonight. What followed was 14 straight hours of intensive financial modeling. I rebuilt their quarterly forecast from scratch, correcting the cascading errors while maintaining the accurate parts of their projections. By 11 a.m. the next day, I'd emailed the completed files to Ren with a detailed explanation of the original error and my methodology for correcting it. I said nothing to Garrett or anyone on our team. The project had been marked complete in our system, the files delivered. I simply continued with my assigned tasks, hoping perhaps that my work would eventually speak for itself. 3 weeks later, Garrett received a glowing email from Pike Industries, praising our team's exceptional attention to detail and financial acumen that had transformed their quarterly reporting approach. Garrett printed the email and hung it in our break room, adding a handwritten note. This is why our senior team members handle the critical client components. The pattern continued for months. I'd solve complex problems, creating systems and approaches that consistently exceeded client expectations. Garrett would claim the victories while continuing to marginalize me in team meetings, resource allocations, and yes, lunch schedules. My performance reviews remained mediocre despite client compliments never reaching my file. When I asked about advancement opportunities, Garrett would smile sympathetically. You're just not quite there yet, Dessa. Keep working on your fundamentals. After Eldon Pike's unexpected office visit and public recognition, the workplace dynamics shifted subtly. Colleagues who had previously ignored me began asking for my input on their projects. Junior team members started coming to my desk with questions they'd once taken to others. Even the reception staff treated me differently, saving the good office supplies that usually disappeared before reaching my desk. Yet Garrett grew more visibly threatened. His micromanagement intensified. My work received even more scrutiny, with Garrett requiring multiple revisions for documents that were previously acceptable. He began copying senior management on emails questioning my methodology or timeline estimates. 2 weeks after the Pike incident, Garrett called me into a conference room. I need to address your communication with clients, he began, sliding a folder across the table. You've been operating outside established protocols. Inside was a printed email from Eldon Pike addressed to me directly, thanking me for additional insights I'd provided on optimizing their new financial model. All client communication goes through proper channels, Garrett continued. This creates confusion about who their actual point of contact should be. Eldon reached out to me directly, I explained. I thought it would be impolite not to respond. It's Mr. Pike to you, Garrett corrected. And your job is data verification, not client relationship management. I've been working with Pike Industries for 7 years. You've been here 7 months. I nodded, accepting the official warning he placed in my file for circumventing communication protocols. That evening, I sat in my apartment, staring at my laptop screen. The warning felt like the final push I needed. I opened a new document and began meticulously recording every interaction with Garrett, every client project I'd contributed to, every instance where my work had been reattributed. I created a timeline of emails, meeting notes, and project outcomes. Then I made a decision. I would stop correcting Garrett's mistakes. For months, I'd been quietly fixing errors in his reports, adjusting misaligned projections in his presentations, and clarifying his often confusing client communications. No more. I also began building relationships with other clients who'd benefited from my unacknowledged work. Not by breaking protocols, but by being exceptionally responsive and thorough whenever they reached out through official channels. I made myself quietly indispensable to them while documenting every interaction. The quarterly business review was approaching, an all-day meeting where each department presented their metrics to the executive team. Garrett had been preparing for weeks, refining his presentation, highlighting our division's remarkable client retention strategy. The day before the review, Garrett dropped a thick folder on my desk. I need these numbers verified and formatted for tomorrow's presentation. I need it by 6. I opened the folder to find raw data from our 5 largest client accounts, including Pike Industries, with handwritten notes from Garrett indicating how he wanted certain metrics presented. The data told a very different story than the one Garrett planned to present. Client satisfaction ratings had dropped in 4 of 5 accounts. Response times had lengthened. The only consistently positive metrics were tied to projects I had directly handled. I verified the numbers exactly as they were, without the creative visualization Garrett had indicated. I formatted everything precisely as requested and returned the completed work at 5:55 p.m. Everything accurate? Garrett asked, barely glancing at the pages. Everything is exactly what the data shows, I confirmed. The next morning, the executive team gathered in the main conference room. Department heads delivered their quarterly reports one by one until Garrett's turn arrived. He stood confidently, clicking through slides, showing impressive-looking growth charts and retention statistics. He highlighted the division's hands-on management approach and his personal investment in key client relationships. When he finished, our CEO leaned forward. You've presented some impressive metrics for client satisfaction, Garrett. Who specifically handles the day-to-day with our top 5 accounts? Garrett smiled. I personally manage those relationships, with support staff handling routine communications under my direction. I watched silently as he detailed his approach to client management, explaining how he'd restructured our response protocols and personally intervened in critical situations. The CEO nodded, then reached into a folder. That's interesting. We actually surveyed those exact clients last week about their account management experience. Garrett's smile froze. 3 couldn't identify you by name, the CEO continued, sliding a paper across the table. 2 specifically mentioned someone else entirely. They all named this person as their primary contact and problem solver. They've also indicated they'd follow this employee anywhere. The executive team turned toward me as Garrett stammered to respond. If you're feeling the tension building like I was in that moment, please hit that like button right now and subscribe to our channel. The power dynamic was about to shift dramatically, and you won't want to miss what happens next when the CEO reveals what was on that paper. Turn on notifications because what I did next changed everything. The CEO continued. Based on this feedback, we're restructuring around client relationships rather than departments. The data is clear. Clients stay because of consistent, knowledgeable points of contact, not organizational charts. Garrett's complexion cycled between white and crimson. With all due respect, sir, I've personally cultivated these relationships for years. One survey doesn't capture the full scope of 7 years with Pike Industries, yes, the CEO interrupted, glancing at his notes. Yet when we asked Mr. X, Pike, who manages their account, he specifically named Dessa Elliott and couldn't recall working with you directly in over 4 months. The conference room felt charged with an almost electric tension. Every executive's attention darted between Garrett, the CEO, and me. We're creating a new client success division, the CEO announced, closing his folder with finality. And based on this client feedback, we'd like you to lead it, Dessa. 22 years of professional composure nearly shattered as I processed his words. Thank you for the opportunity, I managed to say. I'd be honored. Garrett stood abruptly. This is completely appropriate. Our CFO interjected, speaking for the first time. The retention numbers in those accounts speak for themselves. The revenue growth in Pike Industries alone justifies the restructure. The meeting concluded with logistics about my new role, reporting structures, and transition timelines. As we filed out, the CEO touched my elbow. My office, 15 minutes, he said quietly. Walking back to my desk, I felt strangely hollow despite having just achieved what should have been a triumphant vindication. Colleagues stared openly, whispers following in my wake. Garrett had vanished immediately after the meeting. 15 minutes later, I sat across from the CEO, Anders Levitt, in his corner office. That was uncomfortable, he said, settling into his chair. Necessary, but uncomfortable. I wasn't expecting any of this, I admitted. Clearly. He tapped a pen against his desk. 3 months ago, Eldon Pike called me directly after his quarterly presentation. He described in impressive detail how you had saved them from a potential financial disaster. I made a note to watch your contributions more closely. He turned his monitor toward me, revealing a spreadsheet with client satisfaction metrics sorted by team member. Last month, we implemented a new tracking system that logs who actually works on client deliverables versus who submits them. Your name appeared consistently in the background of our highest performing projects, yet never in the presentation credits. I remained silent, processing that my work had been visible after all, just not to me. What convinced me something was fundamentally wrong was this. He pulled out a folder containing two versions of the same report. One I'd prepared for Garrett, and another Garrett had presented as his own work. The only differences were the removal of my name and the addition of elaborate charts that actually misrepresented the data. We need people who understand both numbers and clients, Anders continued. Your role will oversee client strategy across all departments. Garrett will report directly to you. My breath caught. Sir, given our history, I'm not sure that arrangement would be productive. It's not permanent, Anders replied. It's a transitional structure while we evaluate the entire department. How you handle this leadership opportunity, including managing someone who didn't value your contributions, will tell us a lot about your executive potential. The implication was clear. This was as much a test of my leadership capabilities as it was a recognition of my work. One last thing, Anders added as I stood to leave. Why didn't you ever come forward about any of this? I considered the question carefully. I believed the work would eventually speak for itself, I finally said. And it did. As I closed his office door behind me, my phone vibrated with a company-wide email announcing my promotion. By the time I reached my desk, 17 messages already waited in my inbox. The first was from Garrett. We need to discuss this transition immediately. My office, 2 p.m. I didn't respond. Instead, I began methodically packing my personal items to move to my new office, the one previously occupied by the former head of client services who had recently retired. At precisely 2 p.m., I entered Garrett's office, carrying a leather portfolio and closing the door behind me. He didn't stand. This is an obvious mistake that will be corrected once the executive team realizes you lack the experience to manage client relationships at this level. Is that what we need to discuss? I asked, taking a seat without waiting for an invitation. What you need to understand is that I built this department. These are my client relationships. This restructuring is temporary at best. I opened my portfolio and removed a single sheet of paper. This is the transition plan approved by Anders. It outlines the new reporting structure and your responsibilities moving forward. Garrett barely glanced at it. I'm not reporting to someone I hired as a data checker 7 months ago. That's certainly your choice, I replied evenly. I've included 2 options for your role moving forward. Option 1 maintains your current salary with adjusted responsibilities under the new structure. Option 2 is a generous separation package. His laugh held no humor. You can't seriously believe you have the authority to terminate me. Page 2 details the separation provisions pre-approved by HR and legal, should you choose that option. I watched as understanding slowly transformed his expression. Either way, I'll need your decision by tomorrow afternoon. This won't end well for you, Garrett said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. I know every senior person in this industry. One word from me would carry significantly less weight than the testimonials from Pike Industries, Asteria Group, and Concord Financial, our 3 largest clients who have all specifically requested to work with me and my team moving forward. I stood, gathering my portfolio. Their combined business represents 62% of our annual revenue. You orchestrated this entire thing, he said, realization dawning in his eyes. I paused at the door. No, Garrett. I simply stopped hiding how things actually worked. The reality became visible once I stepped out of your shadow. The next morning, Garrett wasn't at his desk. By afternoon, facilities staff were packing his office, while HR conducted an exit interview in a conference room 3 floors away. He had chosen option 2. My new role brought immediate challenges. The team that had witnessed my public humiliation for months now looked to me for leadership. Some were immediately supportive, especially those who had also experienced Garrett's management style. Others remained skeptical, waiting to see if my authority would last. I spent my first week meeting individually with every team member, learning about their aspirations, frustrations, and ideas for improving our client relationships. I discovered talented people who had been systematically undermined, just as I had been. Elise, a brilliant strategist who'd been relegated to administrative tasks. Kendrick, whose innovative client portal idea had been dismissed repeatedly, despite client requests for exactly such a tool. Phoebe, whose financial models were consistently more accurate than anyone else's, yet who remained stuck in an entry-level position after 3 years. He always said I wasn't ready for client interaction, Phoebe admitted during our one-on-one. But I have a master's in financial communications. Client interaction was literally what I was trained for. Pattern by pattern, I uncovered Garrett's systematic approach to maintaining control while limiting the growth of anyone who might eventually challenge him. The department didn't lack talent, it lacked opportunity. My second week, I implemented our first structural changes. We reorganized around client needs rather than internal hierarchies. Team members were assigned to accounts based on skill alignment rather than seniority. Everyone received direct client contact appropriate to their expertise. By month's end, client satisfaction metrics had increased across all accounts. Response times decreased by 40%. Project delivery accelerated while accuracy improved. Anders called me to his office after reviewing our first monthly performance data. Impressive turnaround, he noted, scrolling through the dashboard. But I'm curious about something. These improvements happened too quickly to be the result of new processes alone. The capability was always there, I explained. We just removed the barriers. He studied me thoughtfully. Garrett's leadership approach created those barriers? His leadership approach was the barrier, I clarified. He deliberately limited team members' growth to maintain control. Anders nodded slowly. We should have recognized it sooner. I apologize for that. You recognized it eventually, I offered. That's more than many organizations manage. Still, it raises concerns about our ability to identify problematic management styles before they impact talent retention. He tapped his desk thoughtfully. I'd like you to join our executive leadership team. We need your perspective as we evaluate our management practices company-wide. Just like that, 4 months after being publicly named the least valuable person in the department, I was sitting at the executive table. The next quarter brought new challenges. 2 competitors attempted to poach our newly empowered team members with aggressive compensation packages. A key client underwent a merger that threatened to eliminate their contract with us. The financial markets experienced unexpected volatility that affected our forecasting models. Through it all, our reconfigured team demonstrated remarkable resilience. People who had once waited for instructions now proactively identified problems and proposed solutions. Meetings that had once been dominated by a single voice now featured robust discussion from multiple perspectives. Most importantly, clients noticed the difference. Our quarterly business reviews transformed from tense interrogations about missed deadlines to collaborative planning sessions for future growth. 6 months into my new role, I received an unexpected LinkedIn message. Congratulations on the well-deserved promotion. Your team certainly seems to be thriving. Perhaps we could meet for coffee sometime? Garrett. I ignored it. 3 days later, another message arrived. I've taken a position with Hendricks Group. They're very interested in your client management approach. A conversation between colleagues would be mutually beneficial. Hendricks Group was our largest competitor, known for aggressive client acquisition tactics. I forwarded the message to our legal department and continued focusing on our growth strategy. The following week, Eldon Pike requested an urgent meeting. Hendricks Group reached out with a compelling proposal, he explained when we met. They're offering significant cost reductions if we transfer our business to them. That's not unusual during contract renewal season, I noted, maintaining a calm I didn't entirely feel. Pike Industries still represented our largest client relationship. What's unusual is their representative claimed intimate knowledge of our financial structure and reporting requirements. He suggested your team was hiding operational inefficiencies that impact our service costs. I raised an eyebrow. That representative wouldn't happen to be Garrett, would it? Eldon's expression confirmed my suspicion. He presented detailed analysis of our account. Some points seemed concerning until our financial team reviewed them. And what did they find? Creative misrepresentation of standard industry metrics. Eldon replied with a thin smile. The same type of manipulation you caught in our forecasting error. Apparently, Garrett didn't realize we now have staff trained to spot exactly those distortions. Relief washed through me. I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. I didn't come to warn you, Eldon clarified. I came to inform you that we're expanding our contract with your firm by an additional 30% next quarter, and to ask if you'd consider presenting at our annual Financial Leadership Summit. We'd like others to learn your approach to data integrity and client partnership. News of Pike Industries' expanded contract and Garrett's failed poaching attempt spread quickly through industry channels. 2 more clients increased their engagements with us. 3 prospective clients requested proposals specifically citing our reputation for data integrity. 9 months after my promotion, Anders invited me to dinner with the board of directors. What I had assumed would be a standard quarterly business discussion turned out to be something else entirely. We've been evaluating our succession planning, the board chair explained between courses. Anders has indicated his intention to transition toward retirement over the next 18 months. I nodded, wondering why this concerned me directly. We'd like you to consider a new role as Chief Operating Officer, she continued, working directly with Anders to learn all aspects of company leadership with the potential to advance further when he retires. The opportunity was beyond anything I could have imagined when I joined the company barely 16 months earlier. Your ability to transform underperforming systems while maintaining client relationships demonstrates exactly the leadership philosophy we want to cultivate, Anders added. Plus, the financial results speak for themselves. Your division's profitability has increased 43% year over year. I accepted the position, of course. The transition would begin the following month, after we completed the current quarter's reporting cycle. 2 days later, I received another LinkedIn message. Heard about your continued ascent. Perhaps now you might see the value in that coffee conversation. I have insights about the board that could prove useful in your new role. Garrett. This time I responded, thank you for your interest in my career progression. All communication regarding our company should be directed through appropriate channels as outlined in your separation agreement. I wish you continued success at Hendricks Group. I blocked his profile immediately after sending the message. My first official day as COO dawned with unexpected news. Hendricks Group had announced a major restructuring, including significant leadership changes. Garrett's name appeared on the list of departing executives. Their press release cited strategic differences regarding client relationship management. That afternoon, Anders dropped by my new office. Interesting development at Hendricks, he remarked casually. Their CEO called me this morning. Apparently, Garrett had been making certain representations about client relationships that didn't materialize. That sounds familiar, I replied, unable to suppress a small smile. Indeed. She also mentioned they've had 3 complaints about his management approach in just 4 months. Anders shook his head. Some people never learn that leadership isn't about control, it's about cultivation. Speaking of cultivation, I said, changing the subject, I've been reviewing our management training programs. I'd like to propose some adjustments based on what we've learned from the department restructuring. I'd expect nothing less, Anders said with approval. That's exactly why you're sitting in that chair. 1 year to the day after Garrett had announced to the entire office that I was the least valuable person on the team, I stood at the podium during our annual company meeting. As COO, I was presenting our new strategic direction to over 300 employees. I outlined our vision for collaborative leadership, transparent client relationships, and growth opportunities for team members at all levels. I introduced new professional development pathways designed to identify and nurture talent throughout the organization. Most importantly, I announced a fundamental change to our company culture. Value in our organization will no longer be determined by position, seniority, or who speaks the loudest. Value will be measured by contribution, collaboration, and the difference we make for our clients and each other. As applause filled the room, I caught sight of my former team members, now department heads, team leaders, and rising stars in their own right. People whose talents had been buried under an insecure manager's need for control were now driving innovation across the company. That evening, as I gathered my things to leave, I found a small package on my desk with a card signed by the entire former team. Inside was a custom-made nameplate for my desk. It read, Dessa Elliott, Most Valuable Leader. The revenge wasn't in Garrett's downfall. It was in the thriving of everyone he had tried to diminish. These days, lunch schedules are a thing of the past in our office. We have a fully stocked kitchen and flexible breaks. People eat when they're hungry, rest when they need to recharge, and collaborate without artificial hierarchies. Everyone is valuable here, and they all know it. If my story resonated with you, whether you've experienced workplace marginalization or witnessed it happening to others, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to navigate a toxic work environment? Did you find ways to demonstrate your value despite obstacles? Your experiences might help someone else who's currently walking the path I once traveled. Hit the like button if you believe in workplaces where everyone's contributions are recognized, and subscribe to hear more stories of professional transformation and justice. Remember, sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't about bringing others down. It's about lifting yourself and everyone around you higher than anyone thought possible.